Dang, I started recording way too early.
You just trimmed the video.
Yeah.
You got this.
Hey guys, this is Doug with 4 Wheel Drive Trek. Today we got a 2017 Toyota Tacoma TRD Pro. We're going to be swapping out the upper control arms at the front. The guy put a lift in, but didn't swap out the control arms, so the alignment's a little bit off. So we're going to swap that out today, so it doesn't wear out those tires prematurely. Let's jump into it. First things first, you want to make sure put that e-brake on, put it in park, and chock those rear wheels. We're going to be lifting up the front end of the vehicle. Don't want that thing to roll back without the tires on there and come crashing down. So remember, safety first. First things first, before you jack the vehicle up, you want to make sure the lug nuts are at least loose. Once you're up in the air, it's going to be a little more difficult to loosen those up unless you have something like an impact wrench. Generally, most people like to put the vehicle on just jack stands, pull the jack out. I like to leave the jack on, but with also the jack stands. 3 points of contact, extra safety there just in case, and you never know what can happen. So,
using an impact gun makes short work of removing lug nuts. To gain access to the upper control arm bolt, you need to remove the splash guard. Using a 19mm socket and breaker bar, followed by a ratchet, remove only the nut on the upper control arm bolt. Using a 10mm socket, remove this bolt and bracket. Using some needle nose pliers, remove this cotter pin out of the castle nut. Using a 19mm socket, remove this nut off the ball joint. You may need to use a breaker bar to break it free first. Don't quite remove the nut completely off. Make sure you leave it threaded on just a little bit for the next step. To get this separated, give the side just a little bit of a whack. Depending on how old it is, it may require some extra persuasion. To prevent any extra strain on any of the brake components, you can use a bungee cord on the steering knuckle and hold it up. Once you have that done, go ahead and release the rest of the nut off of the ball joint, and then pull up on the top of the control arm to release it free. To gain access to the control arm bolt, you will need to remove or bend out this piece of sheet metal underneath the fender. I chose to bend it out a little bit easier. On the driver's side only, you do have one bolt holding this wire cluster in there. You will need to remove it with a 10mm socket or ratcheting wrench. You are going to need to push out the upper control arm bolt. It is quite long, so you might need to tap it in from the back side to get it to clear the fender. This is where having a second set of hands may be helpful. With that bolt out of the control arm, you are now free to remove the old control arm out of the vehicle. As you can see, the old control arm has nothing on the Old Man Emu new upper control arms that we're installing. Now it is time to install the upper control arm. You will need to slide the bolt in through the front side of the new control arm, through a channel behind the spring, and back out the rear side of the control arm. This is also easier with a second set of hands. This may take some slight finesse and wiggling to get the bolt to slide all the way through. Once it's through, grab the washer and the nut that you removed earlier, put that on and thread it on finger tight. Now insert the ball joint into the top of the steering knuckle and go ahead and remove the bungee cord. You're not going to need that anymore. Screw the nut on, finger tight, onto the ball joint. Now, using a ratchet, tighten up the upper control arm bolt, followed by a torque wrench. Make sure you check your manufacturer specs on how much pressure is needed for the torque wrench. Use that same process with a ratchet and a torque wrench to tighten up the ball joint from the upper control arm to the steering knuckle. Make sure not to over tighten either nuts. I'm going to insert a cotter pin into the castle nut to make sure that nut does not come undone. Bend out the tabs behind it to make sure it seats correctly and will not remove
So look what I did. This is supposed to be on the outside, bolts onto this. So make sure this is on the outside of this when you put it on.
Make sure and reinstall the brake line bracket with that 10mm bolt we removed earlier. Tighten it up till it is nice and snug. Using a large mallet, straighten out that sheet metal that you bent out earlier. Also, give it a little bit of spray paint to make sure it does not rust over.
So now we got the driver's side done. Now we're going to switch over to the passenger side. Passenger side is basically the same thing. Taking all the same parts off, put them all back on. And then make sure that wheel speed sensor cable is on the outside of that upper control arm when you put that bolt through, so you don't have to take it apart and do that again. Now that we got that all done, got both sides complete, all you gotta do is pull the jack stands out, lower it back down, pull the chocks out, and then we're good to go. Make sure you have a professional alignment done. It is very imperative, so you have the best control you can. It steers straight on the freeway, and it also doesn't wear out your tires prematurely. That's pricey to replace the tires if you don't get that alignment properly done. So if you like what you see, please like, subscribe, and share the video. And